Well, we are moving into our third week of our series called Project Gratitude, where we are taking an intentional look at what it means to be a people that are grateful. During this Thanksgiving time of year, there's lots of things that go around on social media, and some of you are participating in those, saying something every day that you're thankful for. And so we wanted to talk as a church as to why we as Christians especially are grateful people and how that is a witness to who Jesus is in this world and how God is still active in this world. So during this series, we've been trying to debunk a couple of things and then give you some principles and scriptures that you can tape to the mirror and recite to yourself as they apply to you. Now, one of the things that's popular in our world today is to believe that everything is just going to Hades in a handbasket, right? To just feel like that everything is getting worse and we're just spiraling out of control. And if you flip on the news at night or you talk to your grandma, that's how you're going to feel most of the time, right? Because we believe that things in this world are not going the way that God might intend. But I'm here to tell you that as Christians, we believe that our world is moving on to redemption, that our world is moving on to reconciliation, and that we get to be a part of that. And of course, there are things in the world that are not the way that they should be. But we are the people that God is calling to make those things right. When there is not enough food for people to eat, we have places like loaves and fishes. When there are people around the world who have never even received a gift and they need to hear about who Jesus is, we have thousands of shoe boxes that get sent around the world. We are God's hands and feet here on this earth. And part of what we have to do to continue down that path and be the people that God has called us to be, to continue being the church that God has called us to be, is to examine how it is that God believes we can be grateful in the midst of this world just the way that it is. We talked about Proverbs 11:27, and we'll throw that up on the screen for you right now. But Proverbs 11:27 says, "If you search for good, you will find favor, but if you search for evil, it will find you." And we had to admit that we have got to be people that look for the good and not people that look for the bad. Because I'm going to be honest with you, whatever you look for, you're going to find it, right? Whatever you're searching for, you're going to find it. And if you're looking for the good in life, you're going to find the good in life. And if you're looking for the negative in life, you're going to find that too. You see, we talked through some of these verses in Romans 8, and I'm just going to walk through them really quick and share the principle that we took away from them with you. We talked about that our sins are forgiven and our eternity is secure. That even though we can fret the things that go on in this world, that our sins are forgiven and our eternity is secure. And even when death and disease and pain come in this world, we talked about the next principle, which is our future victory is greater than our present pain. That our future victory, that who God is and who God is making us into, our eternity together is greater than the pain that we face now. We talked about Romans 8:28, and we debunked the idea that everything happens for a reason. We said we didn't get that from the Bible. We got that from somebody's tweet, right? We got that from YOLO. Anybody else hashtag you only live once? No? Okay. But we, as people of faith, know that what God says in Romans 8:28 is that I know that there will be pain and trouble and harm, and I do not wish those things upon you. I did not purpose those things for you, but I can take even the worst of things and make good come out of them. And that is the belief that we have as Christians, is that there is pain and hurt and harm in this world. But even from the ashes, God can raise up something good. And finally, coming out at the end of Romans 8, we have that nothing can separate us from the love of God no matter what. That no matter where we go, no matter what we face, the difficulties that we have, the things that we see in this world, no matter what occurs, nothing can separate us from the love of God. Now, perhaps sometimes we're not going to feel it the way that we felt on those youth retreat mountaintop high moments. But we, as mature people of faith, know that God walks with us no matter what, even when we don't feel that presence around us. And so then we jumped into this second week. So we really worked the first week on kind of talking about our attitudes. And we talked about how that we are not optimistic based on how we feel or even what we see. That we as Christians are optimistic based on who God is and what God says. Now, the next week we started talking about, okay, if we're going to adjust our attitudes a little bit, there's a few more things we've got to know. So we looked at James 1:17. And James 1:17 says for us that every good and perfect gift is from above. That all of the things that we celebrate in this life that are good and wonderful, those have been blessings and gifts from God. The beautiful music, the shoeboxes we see, the way that we feel when we get to do those things, our family and the things that we love and what we're looking forward to during this holiday season, that those are all gifts from a God who loves us. We looked in Ecclesiastes 6:9 and we said, and this is just one of the verses, this one was just for me, I just shared it with all of you guys. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. And we talked about not letting what we want rob us of what we have. Don't let what you want rob you of what you already have. And lastly, we looked in Psalms 103 and we talked about turning every good and perfect thing that we have in this world and not just enjoying it just as this good and perfect gift, but turning around and praising God for this goodness that we have been given. And we begin to do those things that God can work our hearts towards gratitude because we are not naturally grateful people. We looked all the way back at Adam and Eve. They were ungrateful from the start. And so we fight against that as human beings. But God has given us gratitude to help do that. Gratitude turns what we have into enough. And you will even get to this beautiful place of where gratitude will turn what you have into more than enough. More than enough. You're like, okay, Stephen, thank you for summing all that up. If you could have done that in 5 minutes, why do we have the last 2 weeks? And that's a fair question. But we know these things, so now what? What do we do with them? You see, the first week was really about kind of adjusting our attitude. And so now that we've kind of adjusted our attitude, and the second week is understanding the difference between the bad things that happen in this world and the good things that God has given us and how we can then turn to being grateful once we've kind of addressed the attitude of our hearts. So now what do we do with this? And the word I want to share with you this morning is simply being an encouragement. That God has given us these gifts, God has given us these good things, but now God has called us to be like God. We're going to look in 2 Corinthians 7, 5 through 6. 2 Corinthians 7, 5 through 6. When we arrived in Macedonia, there was no rest for us. We faced conflict from every direction with battles on the outside and fear on the inside. I love that second part of that verse. I never remembered it before. That there were battles on the outside, but he was facing fear on the inside. But God, who encourages those who are discouraged, encouraged us by the arrival of Titus. But God, who encourages those who are discouraged, encouraged us by the arrival of Titus. You see, our God is an encouraging God. And this particular example from 2 Corinthians, he sends somebody to be an encouragement. He sends Titus to these people so that they will be encouraged in their faith, one, from the battles that are on the outside, but also from the fears that are on the inside. And in our world today, for most of us, we really don't face a whole lot of battles from the outside, but we face a whole lot of fears from the inside. And our God is an encouraging God. And you see, I believe that as we begin to model that as Christians, that we are called to be an encouraging people. If we go back and think about the conversations we've had, if we go back and think about the things we've posted on social media, if we think about the way that we've behaved, are we an encouragement to this world, a person, a people who are constantly making it a better place the way that God would have? Or have we let negativity and fear turn us into a people who are not very encouraging? So there are 3 ways I think that we find here in 3 different chapters in Romans and 1 Samuel and in Matthew of how we can be encouraging the way that God is. So let's look at Hebrews 3:13 together. But encourage one another daily as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. But encourage one another daily as long as it's called today. So one of the ways that we are encouraging like God is we actually encourage each other daily. Now, I kind of glazed over this one when I was looking at it. I didn't think it meant a whole lot, but I started thinking about the way that I interact with people on a daily basis, and I found something to be true about myself that I hope is not true about you, but I'm afraid it may be too. I find on a daily basis, I'm more critical and constructive than encouraging. And that the moments where I'm over the top encouraging with somebody are actually kind of rare. Anybody else, if you think about the way that you encourage people, would find that to be true? We have the moments where someone goes and gives 110% or out of the way and we encourage them. But if we actually thought about how often that happened, it's kind of rare. But here in Hebrews, we're told to encourage one another daily. Daily. And that just sounds like too much work, right? That sounds like I'm going to have to think about it. That sounds like I might even have to have a plan. That sounds like I'm going to have to get one of those little weight things that you squeeze, you know what I'm talking about? So that I can actually write all those notes. You know what I mean? I don't write handwritten things very much. My hand would probably cramp up after 2 of them. How are we going to encourage each other daily? And here's where I felt like God started to work on my heart a little bit too for me, but also for us here, is one of the places where I hear voices of discouragement the most is in my own head. How about you? Do you feel that way? There are voices of discouragement all around in this world, but I want to tell you the one that is after you the most is living inside of your own mind right now. It's imagining what other people think and what other people are going to say. It's imagining what they may be thinking or how they believe about you or just the fear that you have that live inside of you, like we looked at in 2 Corinthians. So when we're talking about being encouraging daily, we're also talking about to ourselves. How do we even affirm ourselves? And when we look in the mirror, do you say encouraging things to yourself or not? You don't have to say them out loud, right? We begin to think about the success that we've had or the career that we're on or our family or whatever it is. Do we say encouraging things to ourselves and to the ones that we love or do we not? Because you see, God is a God of encouragement. Sometimes that encouragement comes through other people. But as mature Christians, it also comes from us. Secondly, we're going to look at Romans 1, 10 through 12. One of the things I always pray for is the opportunity, God willing, to come at last to see you. For I long to visit you so that I can bring you some spiritual gift that will help you grow strong in the Lord. Let's pause it right there. Have you ever said that to somebody? I just can't wait to come see you so I can bring you a spiritual gift. They would be like, we actually canceled Thanksgiving, no thanks. Right? Because we don't know what that means. What does that mean? I'm going to bring you a spiritual gift. What could he possibly be bringing? What is a spiritual gift that you can bring and take to someone else? When we get together, I want to encourage you in your faith, but I also want to be encouraged by yours. You see, we think about our spiritual gifts being our own, but this is actually saying that encouragement, while I do believe it's a spiritual gift to be someone who is naturally encouraging, but when we take that encouragement and we give it to someone else, we are giving them a spiritual gift, something that rejuvenates their soul. I don't know if you've ever had that moment where someone has prayed for you when you were hurting and you were scared and afraid, and can you remember how that felt? Those moments where you were terrified and you didn't know what to do and you opened up the scriptures and you found that God spoke just to you. And even though there might not have been an easy next step answer, you knew that you could have peace and understanding. A spiritual gift. You see, we can say things like, good game. We were watching football games yesterday. I don't know if your day was encouraging or not, depending on your teams. Right? But at the end of one of the games we were watching, the quarterback got up, and like they always do, they get up and talk about giving 110%, and it was a great game. The coaches are great, the players are great, everybody's great. And the quarterback for the University of Georgia, I'll just go ahead and do a plug. He always says he's grateful to God for the opportunity to play the game, for the coaches and the people that are with him. And I thought, you know what? That's how you take something good that's in this life as a gift from God and you turn it into a spiritual gift to others. Right? When we get together and we're here in worship and we clap when somebody does a beautiful solo, we're not clapping just because they gave us their best. We're clapping for the gift that God has given. We're celebrating what God is doing among us and the skills and the talents and the way that we are able to do this together. We take something that is intended for someone else and we turn it and we give it to God. If someone is hurting, you give them a scripture that helped you when you were hurting. When someone is in need of prayer, you actually pray with them. Did you guys know this? It is possible to pray through the phone. Did you know that? The first time somebody did that with me, I thought it was really weird. And then the first time I did it with someone else, it was really weird to be driving down the road with my eyes open and praying for someone that was in another state. But you can pray for people not just when you're in your special place at home, but anywhere and everywhere that they need it. You can be a part of delivering that spiritual gift of encouragement that God has called us to and that God models. 1 Samuel 30, verse 6. David was now in great danger because all his men were very bitter about losing their sons and daughters. Now, we shared this Wednesday night in our Choosing Gratitude class together, those who were there, and I read this verse throughout the week, and it just really started to kind of hit me in the heart. I want you to hear those words again about what is going on with David and why it's going on. David was now in great danger because all his men were very bitter about losing their sons and their daughters. They had every right to be bitter, and I believe that David knew that it was his fault, that he was in this moment. And then he says, they began to talk about stoning him, but David encouraged himself in the Lord. Today, I want you to know that you can encourage yourself in the Lord. And I know what you're thinking, Pastor, that sounds really pastory, but how do we actually do that? You got to preach to yourself sometimes. Sometimes the encouragement that you need, it comes from deep down inside of yourself. The Holy Spirit is working inside of you. That spark of who God is has been in you since the beginning. And sometimes we've got to be the adult men and women of faith that we are and not wait for something to happen on the outside, but to be a part of doing what God has already been doing on the inside. You can simply say to yourself, I have the faith for this. I can get through this. God is with me. God will never leave me. God will not abandon me. I don't know what the outcomes of this are going to be, but I believe that God has called me to a life of peace and understanding, and that even the worst thing will never be the last thing. That my future victory is greater than my present pain. That my sins are forgiven and my eternity is secure, even in the midst of this terrible thing that is going on in my life. This was David's fault, and he still encouraged himself in the Lord. This last one that I want to share with you this morning, this one is for everybody too, but especially if you are somebody who leads other people, if you work in a classroom and you lead students or you lead someone at work or whatever it may be. We take a note from Matthew 3, 16 through 17. And when Jesus had been baptized, just as he came up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. Now we know this moment. This is the beginning of Jesus' ministry. This is the beginning of Jesus being who we understand Jesus to be, the Son of God, the Majesty, the crowned King, the Redeemer of the world. This is that moment where he is baptized. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." God encouraged Jesus publicly. You see, it's one thing to be an encourager. That's an awesome thing to do. But when we lead others and we want to empower them and set a standard for who they are, we encourage them publicly. Have you ever been encouraged publicly by your boss or a superior or your spouse or just somebody else? One of the things that means the most to me in this world is when my wife and I have a discussion about something and I later hear her saying what I thought. Isn't that weird? It's weird, right? Yeah. Not because it superseded what she thought, but because we actually talked about it. And it's an encouragement publicly of something that we were talking about together. We encourage each other publicly because it brings life to the body. You know that feeling if you have been encouraged and how it feels in your soul. I've told you before that I keep the letters of encouragement that I get over the years, and occasionally when I feel like I need it, I'll pull one or two or several dozen out, depending on the day, and go through them and be reminded. As United Methodist pastors, when we transition from one congregation to the other, it's one of my favorite practices to invite the congregation to just simply write a letter. And those are usually the letters that talk about our years of ministry together. And then in this moment when I need someone to preach to me and to tell me that this is going to be okay and we have the faith for this and we can get through this, we reach back and we pull those affirmations from the past. And it is good. It is something that God has given us. In a world that has voices of discouragement all around, everywhere that we turn, on the TV, on social media, just in the lines that we wait in at Publix or wherever, there are voices of discouragement. The worst of which is usually within inside our own heads. And we, people of God, are called to be like our God and to be people who encourage. I'm going to invite Ms. Robin Brumbley to come up right now, and she's going to tell us about a way that we can be encouragers in this wonderful season of Christmas that we're looking forward to. Thank you, Ms. Robin.
Thank you. I do just want to talk about another way that we can support our local community through the Salvation Army. You saw today where we are going to have the angel tree again, but something that my family and I love to do every year, or most years, is to ring the bell at the Red Kettle. And if you've been out shopping, you've already seen the red kettles are out and people are ringing the bells. Well, I have reserved December 14th, Saturday, all day long at the Walmart pharmacy entrance out here at Sango for our church. So what I'm going to do this week is have Janice send out a link for us to sign up to work together as families, as the youth, as individuals, to ring the bell at the kettle to support the Salvation Army and to bring cheer to those that are in our town. If you're musically inclined, my husband likes to embarrass our children by playing the saxophone. And so, Whitney, if you would like to, get out there with your flute and play some Christmas tunes, we have found in the past that actually really does help brighten people's spirits. So, but if you will join us on Saturday the 14th, I would greatly appreciate it.
Robin. What a wonderful way to be an encouragement during this wonderful season of the year. A season of the year that brings us great nostalgia on the inside, and we enjoy being together. We enjoy being thankful and grateful for the things that God has given us. But yet this is also a wonderful time of year to do just like we are already doing, and to take the gifts that God has given us and to be an encouragement to others. And apparently you can even use a saxophone to do that. Who knew, right? And that is absolutely wonderful. Let us go now into our last song today. I'm going to invite you to stand as we move into our last hymn and sing together for what we are grateful for.